Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker, and today we're going to be starting off our set review for the upcoming Lorcana set, Azure at Sea. This will be available at LGS's on the 15th of November, and then a general street release date of the 27th of November. For Shimmering Skies, we did card reviews after the entire set had been revealed, so we just did 6 videos ranking each ink colour, and I did a poll on the channel asking people if they wanted me to do that again, or if they'd rather I just did them in small bunches as they're released. The majority of people would rather the latter, but there were also some people that said, hey, why don't you do first impressions, and then when the whole set is revealed, then do a more dedicated look. So I might do that. I'm going to review the cards in batches as they're released, and then when the entire set's revealed, maybe we'll do a tier list video. Let me know down in the comments if that's something that you'd like to see, but we're going to jump in. A shout out to the channel sponsor, Card Market. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, then check out Card Market. But let's take a look at some Azure at Sea. Alright, so I'm getting the information today from the Mushu Report. As always, a huge shout out to them for being a wonderful source of information. I doubt we'll get through each and every one of these in this video. I'll go for at least half. We'll see. We'll go as far as we can. But we're going to start off with Amber. We've got Chip, Friend Indeed, 3-cost Inkable, 3/3, quest for 1, and Dale's partner. When you play this character, chosen character gets +1 lore this turn. So yeah, we're finally seeing Chip and Dale, and there's a few more cards for them to look at. I'm not going to say they're like hugely favorite characters of mine, like even though the Rescue Rangers is my area, it wasn't the show I watched a lot, but there is a sentiment there because my first ever trip to Disneyland when I was 8 went with my mum and my granddad, and we stayed the one in Paris, and we stayed at the Davy Crockett Ranch, which was like you bring your own camper van or tents, and that was basically the setup. And yeah, Chip and Dale were kind of the signature characters that were always there, so a little bit of sentiment indeed for Chip and Dale. But yeah, +1 lore for a character obviously reminds us of the Amber Donald Duck, who also has Bodyguard. This character has 1 more strength, so it's harder to remove. I would argue Donald Duck is going to be better a lot of the time. Would you play Donald and this? If there's room for it. I'm not sure if you're playing this just for the ability over Donald, but maybe there's synergy with other Chip and Dale cards. And going on to Dale, we've got 3-cost Inkable, Friend in Need, 3/4, quest for 2, and this character enters play exerted unless you have a character named Chip in play. This is a pretty nice stat line. We've got the Moana in set 5, which is this stat line but uninkable, and even she's seeing a little bit of fringe play, and yeah, being inkable, like, this is pretty good. Obviously, entering exerted, if you don't have the Chip, isn't great, but it's also not awful. Like, yeah, you're immediately answered by something like Fox, but you're at least trading. Yeah, I think this is kind of okay. We've got another Chip here, Ranger Leader, 4-cost Inkable, 3/4, quest for 2. And the value of friendship, while you have a character named Dale in play, this character gains support. So support is cool. I'd say one of the most uses that people have gotten out of support really has been to buff things into range for World's Greatest Criminal Mind, or less commonly the Minnie Mouse. However, in set 5 we did get the Great Illuminary, which gives plus lore and I think resist. It gives lore and something else to characters with support. It's not a great card, but just mentioning synergies that are available for support characters. Honestly, I think I'd rather play the Dale that we just looked at, and even if it is coming in exerted, at least you're playing it 1 turn quicker than this. But again, if you're just playing Chip and Dale cards because of potential synergies, then this isn't awful. There is a card missing here between Chip and the Chip and Dale that we're about to look at, so I would imagine this is going to be another Dale. But yeah, looking at the Chip and Dale Recovery Rangers, the tag team. And to be clear, when I call these tag teams, it's not official for a start. And I'm not copying Pokemon, I'm copying wrestling. There's a distinct difference. These are going to be the tag team champions of the world, my guys. But yeah, 8-cost uninkable, 6/6, quest for 3, shift 5. This character counts as being named both Chip and Dale. So if you want to play a Dale that needs a Chip in play to come in ready, then this will do the job. Search and Rescue. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your Inkwell, you may return a character card from your discard to your hand. So returning characters from discard to hand is not awful. Hades has seen some play. We're even seeing some Wreck-It Ralph in some Mufasa decks. And like, again, decks like Mufasa tend to go through characters quite quickly. There's also, of course, synergy with things like the Robin Hood that we got last set. And I said this when that Robin Hood was revealed, that it sets a precedent. I think it's one of our first cards that, like, where you do a dig for the top of the deck, but then they go to the discard, because we've obviously got things like Ariel, Be Our Guest, where you take a card and put the rest at the bottom. Robin Hood was one of our first cards to actually sort of, like, mill the deck. And I said then, the more cards that we get that synergize with the discard, the better those innately become. And there's another card in this set to look at very soon, which has a very similar effect. So if you are playing those sort of cards, then this is a better ability, because, again, you try and mill through so that you can then use this to get to cherry pick your character of choice. It's a super nice stat line, and if you're shifting on 5 and then immediately questing, then that's not awful. But we're uninkable. If you're playing this without shifting, then that probably never feels good. You have to ink to get the ability online, which isn't always the worst. Like, if you're paired with Sapphire, then maybe you can do the, like, you could potentially do this shift on turn 4. And again, if you're Sapphire, maybe you can have a turn where you're inking a couple of cards in a turn and you're returning multiple characters from your discard to your hand. But again, if it's only the first few turns of the game, how many characters are in the discard? It's certainly a powerful ability, but I don't think the value is guaranteed enough. I'd like some cheaper Chippendales. Interesting card, maybe one that we'll look back to. If Chippendale end up getting like a ton of support, then maybe this ends up being worth playing. It's one to keep your eye on based on the power of cards like Robin Hood that mill into the discard. There is another Dale here. I still think there'll be a Dale here in this slot between Chip and Chippendale. But yeah, this Dale, Mischievous Ranger, is that card that I was just referencing a moment ago that has the Robin Hood-esque effect. 4-cost Inkable 3/4 quest for 1. When you play this character, you may put the top 3 cards of your deck into your discard to give chosen character -3 strength until the start of your next turn. I think this is instantly the best of these Chippendale cards, even outside of any sort of Chippendale theme deck that we want to make. The fact that this mills on play is super good. Obviously far not as slow as Robin Hood, who needs to survive a turn and is normally subject to Brawl, which is why he isn't really living up to much potential these days, in my opinion. But yeah, this is a more consistent way to get this mill online. And if you're building your deck in a way where you want to be able to fish cards out of the discard, maybe you want to play, maybe you're playing multiple Chernobyls and it's in your interest to have a lot of characters in the discard to make him cheaper. There's the Merlin's Carpet Bag or something like that that gets items from the discard. There's the Prince John that plays items from the discard. So the more cards we get like that, the more synergies are available that make this super interesting. I don't think there's enough for it to be meta right now, but there's definitely some fun decks that we can play with that this will very much support. Going back to Prince Naveen, 2-cost 2/3 quest for 1. Nothing much to say here, but a shift target if we ever get a Floodborn Naveen in Amber that we want to play. Next up, we've got Chief Bogo, Gazelle Fan. 4-cost 4/4 quest for 1, and you like Gazelle too. While you have a character named Gazelle in play, this character gains Singer 6. Now, we only have one Gazelle at the moment, the 3-cost Inkable 2/3 quest for 2 Singer 5 that we got in set 5. But at least it's somewhat a curve. You play her on 3, this on 4, and then from 5 you're hopefully utilising Singer 6. The problem is we still don't have that many great 6-cost songs. In Amber, there is Blast From Your Past, which I do think is a little bit slept on and I think could get better and better in the future. And then there's Pirate's Life in Ruby and Treasures Untold in Sapphire. So unfortunately, we just don't have enough to really take advantage of this to make it worth it. But again, in the future, the better 6-cost songs we get, this could be interesting. There's probably better ways to do it. Like that in the past, we've seen a few characters that are like shift 3 or 4 for a 6-cost character, which have never seen play because, again, we don't have the songs to go with them. So even when we do get 6-cost songs, I imagine there's a shift line that's still probably better than this. Next up, we've got Judy Hopps, Resourceful Rabbit, 6-cost Inkable 3/6 quest for 2, support, and need some help. At the end of your turn, you may ready another chosen character of yours. So we have a Bernard that we got in set 3 or 4, who has a similar effect to this. He needs to be exerted though, but he is cheaper. But there are a couple of interesting characters that have effects that trigger when they ready. There's the Christopher Robin that we got in set 2. Whenever you ready this character, if you have 2 or more other characters in play, gain 2 lore. And there's the Wreck-It Ralph that we got in set 5, Demolition Dude. When you ready this character, gain 1 lore for each 1 damage on him. There may be others that are missing, those are the first 2 that come to mind. The Christopher Robin I don't think is great. The Ralph could have some potential. And if you choose to pair with Amber, then this could be an option. Again, you should be guaranteed the effect, because well, it's not on play, but you're going to get the ability at the end of your turn from Judy Hopps before your opponent can do anything. So even if you're getting Medusa, you don't hugely care. So yeah, a potential piece in a deck that could be something in the future. Next up, we got Rabbit. 1 cost Inkable, 1/2, quest for 1, and be more careful. When you play this character, you may remove up to 1 damage from chosen character. So that ability, like, is not amazing, but there's things like Grandpuppy, who hasn't seen play for a long time, but is a powerful ability to gain a lot of lore when you remove damage counters from characters. There's already a ton of cards that we've got that do those sort of effects, so no guarantee that this is a better one, but worth mentioning. More than anything, this is a 1 cost Inkable. Like, you've always got to put some respect on 1 cost Inkables, because you never know when they're going to get a good shift target. But this boy does also be a pirate, which does provide synergy with things like Jolly Roger. And I absolutely love the art, and I want to make a point of saying we've only ever had one other Rabbit card, the Reluctant Host from set 2, 5 cost Inkable, 4/6 quest for 2. They're the only 2 Rabbits we've got, and Rabbit's like just a bit of a mood, is he not? I'm so surprised that I haven't seen memes involving this guy, because he is just constantly unimpressed, and it's kind of relatable. But yeah, a lot of love for Rabbit. Next up, we've got Jim Hawkins, Honourable Pirate. Fans of the channel will know I've got a lot of love for Jim Hawkins. 7 cost Inkable, 4/7 quest for 2. Bodyguard, and hire a crew. When you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of pirate character cards and put them into your hand, but the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Love this stat line as well. Like, other than raising the willpower, this is about as perfect as it gets. The 4 strength is kind of perfect. It's out of Medusa. It's out of World's Greatest Criminal Mind. I suppose you could argue you'd rather have 5 so that, and like you take the L to World's Greatest Criminal Mind so that more matches against blue, it takes more than just 1 ice block and a Medusa to remove you. Nonetheless, I still think this is a super good stat line. Questing with 2, Bodyguard obviously can be super good. And yeah, this ability, if you've got enough pirates in your deck, then this card is most likely a piece. Not guaranteed. He's not a Floodborn, which is very, very sad. I think that I'd love this to have been a Floodborn. 7 cost is kind of a lot. If you're paired with blue for any reason, you don't care as much. If you, then again, like, maybe you play a version with Docks, Gastons, Lanterns, maybe then you don't care as much. If you're not doing that, then, like, the earliest you're doing this is turn 7, but even then, that's not awful. Like, quite often a game is, like, because obviously every turn you're looking to ink and play a card, unless you're a deck that draws a tons of cards or you've got a wheel off, there ends up being this kind of stalemate, like, by turn 4, 5, 6, where both players have 1, maybe 2 characters on board, depending on how much the challenging they've been doing, maybe only a couple of cards in hand. Something like this, like to refuel your hand of resources, allows you to play more aggressively and not be as badly punished if they present you with board wipes and things like that. So I do think this is pretty cool. A quick look at the pirates available in Amber. Obviously, Piglet sees a ton of play. Mr. Smee not seen play for a long, long time, but that's unfortunately it. Still has Hook, John Silver, who we've all got to think is like... He actually saw some play in Las Vegas. I'd love this Silver. I need this to be relevant ASAP. There's this Chapter 1 Captain Hook. This Donald Duck, who, when banishing a character in a challenge, can give other characters lore. And if you're paired with red, then you've got Jolly Roger, so you can give this rush. But if you're doing that, then you can't play Jim Hawkins. We need some more Amber pirates, or just for another ink to, like, really have enough pirates to make this worth it. At the moment, it's probably Steel. Ruby obviously has a couple. Emerald, Scroop's not great. He's okay. A worse version of Anna. Don Carnage is pretty good. And John Silver, obviously, I've got a lot of love for. We just need more pirates. But if pirates do get better, or I should say if we just get more good pirates, then yeah, this could absolutely be a piece of that puzzle. Next up, we got Rescue Rangers Away. 2 cost Inkable. Counts the number of characters you have in play. Chosen character loses strength equal to that number until the start of your next turn. So lowering strength can be relevant, we know, because of cards like Brawl, Medusa, Sisu. So if you're playing with Ruby, cool. This probably isn't the best way of it. Well, it might be because you don't have access to Sapphire. Yeah, worth mentioning that synergy there, but realistically, this is not a good card. Next up, a card I'm actually kind of excited for is Pooh Pirate Ship. 1 cost uninkable item and make a rescue. Exert, pay 3, return a pirate character from your discard to your hand. So obviously, this being an item, like, you immediately think of things like Hades, who's a 4-cost character. So basically the same, like, if you want to put this down and use it in the same turn, then it's exactly the same. With Hades, you're establishing a body, which a lot of the time can be better. But if your opponent doesn't have item removal, and this can stick and you can get multiple uses out of it, then in circumstances, this can be better. It goes back to what I just said about Jim Hawkins. We just need more pirates, but any pirate deck that you could build now for fun, it's just a shame that Amber doesn't have a whole ton of them. Like, you'd love this in Ruby or Steel, but again, we don't know. Maybe Amber's going to get a ton more pirates. I expect that's probably the case. We've already got the Piglet Pooh Pirate Captain in Amber. The Tigger's in Ruby, but this card's in Amber. I imagine the Winnie the Pooh that we get, the Captain, will be Amber. And again, a card that synergizes with those sort of effects that I was talking about earlier, that Dale, that mills the top 3, or things like Robin Hood. So right now, it's a piece of a fun deck. As time goes on, this could be super good depending on how good pirates end up being. Moving on now to Amethyst, we have Hades, ruler of the underworld. Love this art, top tier. 6-cost uninkable, 3/4, quests for 3, and Soul Collector. Whenever one of your other characters is banished during the opponent's turn, gain 2 lore. So the first thing worth noting here is this would work in a similar capacity to Lyle Tiberius Rourke, in the context of Be Prepared. If you have this character down with at least one other character and they be prep, this ability will trigger. So if you've got this and 2 other characters and they be prep, then you're going to gain 4 lore. This is an interesting sort of check card, because if you've got enough characters on board to represent game the next turn, say you're at 16 lore, you've just quested out with 2 characters who have 2 lore each, you're at 16. You now put down this Hades. Now removing those 2 characters is not an out, because you would just gain 4 lore anyway, whether that's through challenging or Be Prepared. Or even 8-cost Sisu. Obviously, Under the Sea isn't going to care about this because they're the centre of the bottom of the deck. The stat line isn't great. Obviously, things with 3 strength, we always need to be concerned that they're gonna get exerted by Ratigan, Giant Mouse, the big threat in Lorcana. So 3 is never a number we like, but it's not always going to matter. Again, if you interpret this as a check piece in certain situations, certain board states where, okay, I've quested out, now just by adding this, Be Prep / having characters to challenge and take my characters off the board is no longer an out for you. So essentially, it's a win more card. It's very interesting. The 3 lore really helps it. 6, it's expensive. But again, by the point in the game where you would ever really want to put this down to get the most value, it's going to be later on in the game anyway. It's not something I expect to immediately see play. Mostly because of the uninkability. And by that I mean like high level, like first tournament of set 6 sort of thing. I imagine people will absolutely jam this and try it out. It's a really interesting card. Maybe it does make its way into certain decks who like are aggro enough that they are literally losing to the Be Prep or the Sisu. Like maybe just in aggro. Like again, in aggro doesn't tend to get to 6 ink. But I don't know. I think I'm reaching because I like the concept of the card. I don't think it's brilliant, nor do I think it's awful. I'm very in the middle about this, but it's a very interesting one to talk about. Next up, Sisu in her element, 5-cost inkable, 3/6, quest for 2, challenger 2. Nothing too special. With only 3 strength and being a 5-cost and having no on-play ability, this isn't doing enough, unfortunately, but love the art. Next up, Rafiki, Shaman of the Savannah, 1-cost inkable, 2/2. We already have a 1-cost inkable Rafiki in Amethyst, the Challenger 3 one. But hey, if we get a super good Floodborn Rafiki, well, we are getting a Floodborn Rafiki. Whether it's super good is to be up for debate. But let's put it this way: like, if there was a, if you were playing Robin Hood line, like if you're playing Steel Song and you're playing the Robin Hood line, if you could play a 5th 1-drop Robin Hood, maybe slightly different stat line, like a 1/3, or I don't know. Would you play the 5th 1-drop Robin Hood if you could? And yeah, if we get a good enough Floodborn Rafiki, maybe it's good enough that we opt to play both of these. Next up, we've got Tinkerbell, Queen of the Azeroth Fairies, 7-cost inkable, 5/6, quest for 2, shift 5. She's a Queen Fairy Captain. I haven't been reading the characterizations for a lot of these, which I should be doing, because these things can absolutely be relevant. Hey, just being a captain means Smee won't take a damage. She evasive and shining example. Whenever this character quests, your other fairy characters get +1 lore this turn. So I took a look at this the other day and was having a browse through our fairies. Obviously, we're in Amethyst already, so we have the option of Fairy Godmothers, and this Floodborn has a very interesting ability in and of itself. The only other Tinkerbell in Amethyst, unfortunately, is this 5-cost uninkable one that has evasive, 3/3 quest for 2, and gives Challenger 1 to your Peter Pan characters. Not great. For shift targets, obviously we're shift 5. So there's this Tinkerbell from Steel who's 3 cost, this Tinkerbell from Amber who's 4 cost, this Tinkerbell from Emerald who's 4 cost, and then this Sapphire 5 cost one. I think we would write this off more often than not. It's not a... if we want to shift on curve, then we're just writing this off. So it's either the 3, it's either Steel, Amber, or Emerald. If the idea is also that we want to shift this on 5 and then quest, give +1 lore to other fairies that we've put on the board between turns 1 and 4, and then have a huge questing turn. If we play with Steel, other than this 3-cost Tinkerbell, we've only got the Floodborn Tinkerbell. If we play with Amber, then we've got no other fairies at all. If we play with Emerald, then we do have Merryweather, Flora, and Fauna. And obviously, because we're in Amethyst already, we have access to Blue Fairy and this Fairy Godmother line. So I think that's probably the way to go to try and high roll this the best. You go Emerald, Amethyst, and if you can do a curve of Merryweather, Blue Fairy, either Flora or the Fairy Godmother, Emerald Tinkerbell, and then shift into our Amethyst Tinkerbell on 5. And again, this is assuming our opponent hasn't shifted and played Grab Swords. Maybe they've been able to find Storm Rage on. Like, again, it's matchup depending on what you're up against. But potentially, if you just leave everything ready until turn 5, then you could have a nice jump in lore turn. It's not huge though, because again, this curve, they've only got 1 lore naturally. So you're adding 1 lore to all of them. So 2, 4, 6, and then 8 from the Tinkerbell. So it's all right. It's a bit underwhelming. What we need is some more fairies. And with enough fairies, this could be super interesting. And again, 7-cost songs, obviously Be Prepared is our big one. But the more interesting 7-cost songs we get, then the fact that we could potentially sing it on 5 could be cool. Next up, we've got Rafiki. I was just talking about the Floodborn. Ethereal Guide, 9-cost uninkable, 6/6 quest for 4, shift 7, and Astral Attunement. During your turn, whenever a character is put into your inkwell, you may draw a card. Now, when this was first released, I made a community post of a picture I made, which was the 1-cost Rafiki that we already had. This and the Emerald Hades, who exerts, and you can banish a character to play a character of the same name from your hand. I think a lot of people thought I was putting this forward as like a very serious order. This is going to be broken. More than anything, it was because ever since we got that Hades, I've been wanting a Ruby 1-cost Maleficent so I can jump to Maleficent Dragon. And like, this is our biggest jump that we can make. Obviously, there's already a couple of other things and better ones, as people pointed out. You could just do it with Clarabelle. You could also just play Blurple and play this very early on in the game to not need the Hades. But let me play Hades, leave me alone. Anyway, obviously this stat line is bonkers. 6/6 quest for 4, madness indeed. And yeah, this is a super good ability. Whenever a card is put into your inkwell, or draw a card. I mean, or like, again, very different card. Before I say this, I grant you. But Chicha, who's the 2-cost uninkable, whenever you put the 2nd card into your inkwell, you draw a card. Again, huge difference. I know that she's only a 2-cost. The earliest you're playing this is on 7. Well, that's not true if you're ramp. But again, if you can play this on a turn where you then are still able to ink for turn, maybe you ink something with Quill, maybe you sink 1 jump ahead. Like, if you could guaranteed on the turn you play this, draw 2 or 3 cards. If this ability just read on play, draw 2 cards, we'd probably still be sitting here saying this is way too expensive. So I don't have the highest hopes for him. Just the 4 lore I don't think is irrelevant. Realistically, being uninkable and super expensive is probably not going to see the light of day, but love the art and a powerful effect. Alright, next up we've got Genie, Wish Fulfilled. 4-cost, uninkable, 2/4 quest for 2, evasive, and what happens now? When you play this character, draw a card. So this is a super strong ability. Obviously, the immediate comparisons that you make are to things like Rabbit, who is so much stronger in many, like from a draw strictly from a draw avenue, Rabbit is so much stronger, like drawing when enters and leaving play. But this extra lore is definitely relevant. Being evasive is certainly relevant. Having the 4 willpower is super good. Like, you're not going to immediately, as easily, just if they don't have the evasive threat, then it's not going to be as easy to deal with you necessarily with a cannons, or a smash art isn't going to get you. They need to play just that many more characters to even take you out of a strength or a raging fire. And evasive characters that are in decks generally cap at 3 strength because people are just playing around hitting Diablo at Cove. So outside of like extra cards like cannons and things like that to do extra damage, a lot of evasive characters in format aren't built to hit this 4. The problem is, vast majority of the time, he is just immediately getting brawled. But I don't think that's the worst thing. Again, as obviously, you still go +1 because you drew a card for Genie. You gotta make them have the brawl. You make them use the brawl. And if anything else, maybe this is just make them play the brawl so that your Rabbit is safe. I think the best way to look at this card, my first impression, is it's 5th Rabbit or even 6th Rabbit. There might be deck building situations where you might go for the split. Maybe you play like 3-2. I could see that potentially being an option because this is super strong. The problem is, like, Amethyst already, like if we take Ruby Amethyst for an example, obviously they don't want to play many uninkables as is, especially because that deck has, I think it was Zanzaya that I heard use this term recently in one of their pieces of content. But like, it's got a lot of secret uninkables. You never really want to go. Sometimes you don't want to ink locations because they can be super important to build to play multiple in turns. So it's just another uninkable. So I'm not certain, but I think there's a case to be made that this is 5th Rabbit. Or even, like, at most, I think you could go a 3-2 split. Because, if nothing else, it is also potentially an answer to opposing Diablos. Not if they're at Cove, but make them have the Cove. So, yeah, I do think this is a super interesting card. I'm not sure how often you would play it over the Rabbit. Depends what the rest of your build is, how much other draw the deck has. And, like, if you really need the evasive answer, then there could be an argument. Next up, we've got Yzma, Conniving Chemist. This is my favourite card revealed so far in the set from a gameplay mechanics perspective. 4-cost inkable. Love the art, by the way. I know we've had quite a few frame breaks, but this one with the potion just stands out that little bit more to me. Am I alone there? 4-cost inkable, 3-3. Quest for 2, Feel the Power. I need to get Mama Villain to do her Yzma impression on the channel at some point. If you have Exert, if you have fewer than 3 cards in your hand, draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. As it stands, this is 2 copies of this are going in my Ruby Amethyst list. Again, like, that could change, obviously, but my first deck that I build and test when this set is released. And again, this is, I say that, maybe tons of other cards will be revealed that'll make me change my mind. But as it stands, at least 2 of these are going in my deck. One of our worst matchups is still already discard, whether it's Emerald Steel or Emerald Amber. This as a safeguard is so good. Obviously, if it's Emerald Steel, if there's a rise in this, then maybe they play more smashes. Maybe they can't afford to, just to be able to answer, like, specifically the Amethyst decks packing this. Maybe they need to, but still, make them have it. But this just safeguards you so well, and even if you're not losing your hand, you can just be more aggressive with it, inking and playing more out to just get constant value out of this. Kind of reminds me of, I played a couple of years of Pokemon PTCGO. Oranguru, I think it was, where you could draw to 3, but super like this card. I feel like it's going to be good. It might be that it gets tested early and, like, there's a lot of extra hate for it. Maybe there's extra smashes, just extra ways to take her out. Because, yeah, she dies to Medusa, but I don't really care about that. I think she's good enough that we don't care, even though it's not an on-play ability. And if you do this on curve, then you should get at least 1. And again, with Amethyst, like, they kind of have to make their choices of who they're brawling, and Medusa, well, this can't be brawled, but, like, you have to make them make their choices, because you've got a lot of characters that they would like to, like rabbits and things like that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this initially, so yeah, love it. Next up, we've got a very merry birthday to you, to me. I love this scene. Alice in Wonderland is super sentimental film to me. I've said a few times my tattoo sleeve is Alice in Wonderland based, and yeah, this merry birthday scene is absolutely classic. This card, however, upsets me greatly. 1-cost inkable action. Each opponent puts the 2 cards of their deck into their discard. Excuse me a minute. I don't like it. I don't want it. Mill's getting very real, guys, and this isn't even all of it. Next up, we've got Mad Hatter's Teapot. My goodness, the tea missed the cup. No, no, my dear, the cup missed the tea. Item, exert, pay 1. Each opponent puts the top card of their deck into their discard. So they jam down 2, 3, 4 of these and back gold, Mackle. Back gold. Yeah, I'm upset. I don't know if Mill's got enough yet, but this is certainly going to contribute. Next up, we've got Pixie Dust. 4-cost uninkable item. Exert, pay 2. Chosen character gains Challenger 2 and Evasive until the start of your next turn. It just reminds me of a worse Maui's Fishhook. Obviously, this is in Amethyst, so like that's a thing. You know, some cards have just like buffed or worse versions of cards in other colours because, you know, it's trying to find a balance with what's already available in that colour. But it was still just the first thing that I thought was like, oh, this is just a really bad Maui's Fishhook. But hey, if Amethyst really wants this ability, Evasive we know is good. Maybe Challenger 2 helps fix some maths. But it's a 4-cost uninkable item, so I'm not a fan. Next up, we've got Fairy Ship. 1-cost inkable location. 1 to move there, walk, 4 willpower. 1 passive lore gain. Yeah, it's the Amethyst Deville Manor, which has seen some play in some location aggro variants. So yeah, sure, maybe. Honestly, I'm surprised like this doesn't have an ability relevant to fairies. Maybe there will be fairies that specifically seek out this location or just synergy with locations in general, but if that's the cost, maybe you'd end up playing another one. Amethyst is pretty competitive when it comes to locations. Next up, we've got Mystical Tree. Yes, I am tilting my head to read this. 2-cost inkable, 1 to move there, 7 willpower. We've got Not Bad. At the start of your turn, you can move 1 damage counter from chosen character here to chosen opposing character, and Hard-Earned Wisdom at the start of your turn if you have a character named Mama Odie in play, gain 1 lore. There is also a Mama Odie here to look at that I missed. 5-cost uninkable, 4/5 quest for 1. Whenever you play a song, you may move up to 2 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. We've got 2 Mama Odies already in the game. 1 in Sapphire, 3-cost uninkable, that ramps when you play a song. And in Amethyst, 6-cost uninkable, 3/6 quest for 2. And she has that same ability, but built into her questing, but she's also more expensive. There are a few other cards that have similar effects that move damage. In Amethyst, Belle, there's the legendary Maleficent that we got. Belle sees some play, Maleficent doesn't. It's more cards towards that archetype, which we really just need a payoff for, really. As for the location, 1 ability, same as what I just said, we just need more of a payoff to moving damage counters, like obviously more than just the obvious of, hey, you're putting damage on the opposing character. I need a better reason to want to do that, especially because it's not always consistent to set up. And the ability for extra lore if a Mama Odie's there, sure, unfortunately the Mama Odies I don't think are going to see a lot of play. They're also uninkable. So yeah, this needs a lot more support before it becomes anywhere near viable. We've been going for nearly an hour. I'm going to try and get through the Emerald cards. We've got Jasmine, 3-cost inkable, 2, 3 quests for 1. When you play this character, choose one of these abilities. Either exert chosen damaged character or chosen opposing character gains reckless. So yeah, fan of these cards that have these choices of abilities that you can use. Nice that this is one that you don't also have to pay ink. I think if you're a Damage Matters deck, like a deck that is built to constantly be able to have synergy with your opponent having damaged characters, like we looked at the Hyenas in set 5, things like that, which obviously doesn't see meta play, but in the future could be a thing. If you've got a deck built around that, then this is better. If not, I would rather just play Jack. Well, I'd rather play Lal, but obviously he is uninkable. But yeah, if you want the Reckless on an inkable, I would just play Jack, who's a 1/4, and the quest for 2. And I think the quest for 2 is going to be more relevant more of the time. Again, unless you build your deck in a way where you feel this first ability is online more often than not. Or, if you would like to shift into our Floodborn Jasmine, who's a 6-cost inkable, 5/5 quest for 2, Shift 5, and Ruler of the Seas. When you play this character, if you used Shift to play her, return all other exerted characters to their player's hands. I think this is another example of a strong ability on not a great card, because the ability is strong. It's the having to shift. Like, none of the cards that we've got so far that require you to shift to get the ability are doing anything. Maybe that's a bit of a lie, not doing anything. This Merlin is already seeing some play, but I don't think they're comparable when the shift targets for this Merlin are all incredible and seeing play anyway. Obviously, this Mulan does see some play if you are, like, if you're Mufasa, because you've got reason to play the one-drop Mulan anyway, and this can be a nice surprise option. Similarly, in Mufasa decks, I've seen a couple of people use this Minnie Mouse because they play the Ruby one-drop, and then this is a way to set up their Mufasas for the character that they want to hit. And obviously this Emerald Pegasus, who is already pretty good. People already play the one-drop, and this hop-on needs you to shift to use it. But even without doing that, you're still a shifter, you're evasive, you quest for 2. So maybe saying that none of them have done anything is not true. But they're not doing a whole lot. And yeah, super strong ability to return all exerted characters to your opponent's hand. This could potentially, like, this could be so strong. If your opponent has 3, 4, 5 characters, you just having one Jasmine represents that if they quest out, then you've got this Jasmine to send them all back to their hand. But if they've just done a turn like that and quested out, then they're probably quite far ahead of you. They've got these characters they can just put back down. I don't think she's good enough, unfortunately. I'm super sorry to say. I think she'll see a bit of testing, perfectly fine in a fun deck, but I don't see her breaking through the meta. I'm going to jump to one that I do find really interesting. Is Peter Pan Neverland Prankster. 7-cost Inkable, 4/6 quest for 1. Enters play exerted, and while he is exerted, each opposing player can't gain lore until one of their characters has challenged this turn. This kind of reminds me as to what I was saying about the Amethyst Hades earlier, whereas it presents not so much a check, but it can be a check because it can just bide you the time you need for you to gain lore yourself. Really, it's a comeback card, and it could potentially stop your opponent winning the game. Locations, for a start, aren't going to trigger. Like, even if they've got no characters, but they've got Queen's Castle or multiples, just putting this down means that those locations aren't gaining lore. And if they didn't have any characters, they now need to either have a rush character that can take this out, which if they're Ruby, then obviously Maui is going to immediately take this out. But at least you bought yourself the turn, and maybe that turn is all you needed. Also stops them just being able to exert the Lucky Dime, their Sorcerer's Spellbook, which isn't seeing a lot of play. Flynn Rider could be super relevant. Obviously, this is a card like 7 cost. You're not going to be playing this until later on in the game. But that doesn't mean the Flynn Rider can't come down and gain value. And yeah, you're putting this Peter Pan down with 4 strength. But if they've got a Maui next to that Flynn Rider, or something that's in Ruby's high end, or whatever the other colour combination is, then it's still possible that this Flynn could be representing game, and this Peter Pan is a way of stopping that. Also, if you forget locations or dime or anything like that, if they've just got a couple of characters on board that both quest to get them to game next turn, you play this, even if they take this Peter Pan out by challenging on both their characters, you've still done, well, like, they'll challenge with one, and then because they've challenged, they are allowed to gain lore, but maybe that just one quest now isn't enough to get them to game. I think because this is inkable, this is far more likely to potentially find its way in. I'm not certain it definitely does, because again, this is it's a comeback card, but like, maybe more decks need comeback cards. I'm kind of high on this Peter Pan. I like it. I think it's definitely going to see some test play, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see how popular this ends up being first few weekends of format. Of all the cards I've talked about so far in this video, and please comment and talk about any of them, but I'd love to hear people's thoughts on this Peter Pan specifically, and maybe in the next video we'll go back and we'll read some of those comments. Next up, we've got Captain Hook, Underhanded, 3-cost Inkable, 1/4 quest for 2. Inspires Dread. While this character is exerted, opposing pirate characters can't quest. There was a Ruby Captain Hook in Chapter 1 who, when exerted, your opponent's characters with evasive gain Reckless. So this is kind of a Captain Hook trait, that he has abilities when exerted, but also upper hand. Whenever this character is challenged, draw a card, which obviously immediately makes him a lot better. Obviously the first ability lives and dies by how good pirates end up being in format. If we assume that there aren't a lot of pirates and it's just what's in format now, I mean, even just Smee, at least Smee can't quest. But if you're exerted, he probably just challenges into us. But we survive it because we've got 4 willpower. We're drawing a card. Like, if you can make them have to challenge into this twice, then that's a heck of a lot of value. This is okay. Is it good enough to, like, take a valuable slot in Emerald decks? I don't know, but it's not bad by any means. Next up, Stitch, Alien Buccaneer, 4-cost uninkable, 3/4 quest for 2, shift 3, Alien Pirate, and ready for action. If you shift to play him, you can put an action card from your discard on top of your deck. This is certainly interesting. Again, it's synergy with those cards I was talking about earlier, like the Dale and the Robin Hood that mill from the top of the deck. If you've got some synergy there, and then you use this as a way to cherry pick out the exact action that you want. There's also things like the Mulan from Rise of the Floodborn, the Floodborn one, where you flip the top card of the song and it flip the top card of the deck, and if it's a song, you play it for free. And obviously, actions be songs. Shift 3, it's pretty cheap. Like that he's at least got 3 strength, so he's not in instant brawl range. Uninkable kind of hurts, but he's a pirate, so maybe some synergy for that. A meta card right away? No. Some fun decks that can benefit from this ability? Absolutely. Alright, just going to do a couple more because I really don't want this video to overrun. But we have to take a look at Dawson. 4-cost Ingable, 3/4, quest for 2. My word, he must be around here somewhere. Basil, shout if you are! I love me a bit of Dawson. Obviously, the card is extremely vanilla, but not a terrible stat line. But yeah, just good to see Dawson in the game. They're black, they're brown, they're up, they're down, they're in, they're out, they're all about. They're far, they're near, they've gone, they're near, they're quick and slick and insincere. Beware, beware, be a very wary bear. A heffalumpowoozle is very confusal. A heffalumpowoozle's very sly. Sly, sly, sly. They come in ones and twosles, but if they so choosels, before your eyes you'll see them multiply. Ply. They're extraordinary. I'm gonna stop there. 200 likes and I'll do the whole thing in the next video. 200. We got Heffalumps and Woozles. Adore this art. I need an enchanted. I needs it. Justice for Heffalumps and Woozles. Enchanted. Hashtag 2-cost Ingable. Song. Chosen opposing character can't quest during their next turn. Draw a card. I see a lot of the community super happy with this, and I'm right there with you. I think this is really good, and it's great extra target for Emerald Ursula, Deceiver of All, for a nice double draw. Great against aggro as well. If you can do 3-cost Deceiver of All and then play this on 4, just slow aggro all the way down. But even outside of aggro, just stopping a character quest can absolutely save your game. And yeah, drawing cards is king. I super like this. And again, just the synergy the songs already have, like triggering things like muses. So yeah, Heffalumps and Woozles. And we're going to leave it there for now. I've still got to go through a couple of these Big Hero 6 cards. This one's super strong. We'll talk about it next time. And then move into the Ruby cards. This John Silver's kind of in. This Scar, very excited to talk about that. Scar. Let's do it now. Let's just talk about this Scar super quickly right now, because at least then I can put it on the thumbnail. Heartless Hunter, 5-cost, uninkable. 4/2, quest for 3, and bared teeth. When you play this character, deal 2 damage to chosen character of yours to deal 2 damage to chosen character. So it's got a built-in Teeth and Ambitions on play. So Teeth and Ambitions is already super good. It's not seeing a lot of play at the moment. It's just it's just an extra song that can be sniped by Ursula, and we already want to play 4B prep for friends generally in Ruby Amethyst. But it does see some play, and especially in decks that want to take advantage of self-damage, like if you're playing Ruby Amber, you already have things like Gothel and Mulan, but I've seen people play Teeth to Art of the Diablo, and it can be a way to get a late game Rapunzel online if you miss the Gothel or the Mulan. But there are other things that synergize super nicely with this. Again, we talked about that Ralph earlier, who when he readies, you gain lore equal to the damage on him, which I think could be a bit of a sleeper and could be like super good in the future. Like, I think he can make huge jumps in a turn, and this is another way that we could potentially get that online. There's of course the Gaston Pure Paragon from last set, who you play cheaper for every damage character that we have in play. And again, we talked about the Mama Odie effect earlier that some other characters like Belle have, where you can move damage characters. So there's absolutely some synergy there. I super wish this was a 4/3, even a 3/3. Like, yes, then it only takes 1 ice block and you're dying to brawl, but I'd take that over just already immediately being banished by cannons, Storm, etc. The 3 lore is really good as well. He's uninkable, but this is I super like this card. And this art, like, immediately, this is going to be a top 5. So yeah, huge fan of this Scar. And that's going to be it from me for now. Again, super long video. I think we're just about halfway through, but there'll probably be some more reveals done before we get around to the next video. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Peter Pan specifically. Very interested in that. And yeah, 200 likes. Heffalumps and Woozles, the whole thing next time. But that's going to be it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support. and we'll see you soon.